in your area, then it makes it even easier to try to locate your friends out there in your precinct. Because, for example, here in Texas, we had Deborah Medina run for governor back in 2010, and during the primary in my precinct, I think she ended up getting 30 or 40 some odd votes in my precinct. So I could look at the list of primary voters from the 2010 election, which in my precinct only encompassed about 80 votes in the Republican primary, of which Deborah Medina had like 30 or 40 votes. So there's only 80 doors, actually less than 80 doors that I need to knock on in my precinct to find my 30 or 40 Deborah Medina voters, because a lot of these households, it might be husband and wife, or, son and daughter, or whatever, that are voting age, that have voted from that one household. So use those strategies to find your fellow info warriors, to find your fellow Ron Paul revolutionaries, etc. And the time to find those folks in your precincts is right now. This is dead serious right now. Our best opportunity to make Ron Paul the Republican presidential nominee for 2012, our best opportunity is going to be via the convention process, because you can fully expect the NWO is going to swing those levers and hit those switches and punch those buttons to black box us at every turn. You see them black boxing us, so to speak, in these so-called scientific polls. Alex proved back in 2007, in the fall of 2007, I'm surprised he never talks about it, but Alex actually commissioned a poll back in the fall of 2007 to show that Ron Paul was one of the leaders, if not the leader, and even the poll he commissioned tried to skew the poll that Alex had commissioned. It was amazing, and maybe he'll talk about that in the upcoming future programs. But even in the major so-called mainstream polls, watch for the shenanigans there. Alex proved that it goes on in the polls. So don't trust the polls. Don't trust these pollsters. Don't trust anything. Take action. Get out in your precincts and motivate and connect with your fellow info warriors. Think about this. Think of it, if a total economic depression calamity happened, how important it would be to know your like-minded neighbors. Just for that reason alone is why you should connect to your neighbors. So get out there, get in your precincts, get to know your fellow info warriors, and then when it comes time for your precinct convention, your precinct caucus, this upcoming 2012 election, it's absolutely imperative that you show up with every Ron Paul supporter and info warrior you can muster to these events, because if we end up being a majority in the precinct conventions, and that's politics at the atomic level. If you have an atom if you have like 10 atoms and 80% are Ron Paul atoms and 2% are Rhino atoms in each precinct convention on average, then guess what? When it comes to the Republican National Convention, we will be a majority, and that's how Ron Paul gets to be the Republican nominee. Okay, I'm already a little bit over. Folks, we've got a great interview with Charlotte Iserby coming up, so stay tuned. This next hour, Charlotte Iserby, then Daryl Salente coming up live via Skype right after Charlotte Iserby, and then Alex Jones will be back later today to wrap up with the 27-hour Money Bomb. InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com. Folks, get out there, email to your friends, call your friends, let them know, and make this Money Bomb a success. InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com. Richard Reeves signing off for now. Thank you very much.
Skull and Bones, the order at Yale, 15 of them selected out of every junior class. They paid. Wall Street financed Hitler, financed Stalin, creating communism, which is what they did. That's all very bad, and Skull and Bones is all involved in that with the order.
They concerned the build-up of the three types of socialism, Bolshevik socialism in Russia, what we might call welfare socialism in the United States, and Hitlerian or National Socialism. And each book examines the financing and the contributions made by Wall Street, by international bankers, to the development of that specific form of socialism.
It also was involved in changing the American education system from a classical academic, brain-oriented thinking, destroying that, and imposing an animal training method, which Skull and Bones was deeply involved, and I think I would just say the only entity at that time deeply involved, and managed to bring that wretched system of operant conditioning, Pavlov, Skinner, whatever you want to call it, animal training, out of the laboratory in Leipzig, Germany, Wilhelm Wundt, and get it adopted by leading American educators.
Motivation and reward are crucial factors in learning. A motivated animal will learn any response which occurs and is promptly followed by a reduction in the strength of the drive.
My father and grandfather were members of the order. Skull and Bones was put together by William Russell in 1830, secret society at Yale University. And the connections with Germany are pretty extensive. You know, the Illuminati, I think, it's got to be, I think that there's a lot of research out there that I haven't even read that is there, that does connect it with the Illuminati. And the Illuminati, of course, was Bavarian Marxist society based on destroying the family, destroying the church, which at that time was Catholicism, destroying religion, destroying national entities, boundaries, no more. I have, you know, the Proofs of a Conspiracy by Robeson, an original copy of that, and it says right in there, you know, where the order, it's interesting, the order, right? The goal was to, just as I said, down with the family, down with the royalty. At that time, governments were royalty, and they were religious. That was Western European, right? Down with nationalism, get rid of countries, drop borders. I mean, and people think that that's new. The Illuminati order, this is Skull and Bones, see? The Illuminati order documents show that Raphael in the Illuminati is identified as the same Professor Karl Casimir Wundt. This is fascinating. Kirchenrat Karl Casimir Wundt, the one we're talking about, was professor at Heidelberg University in the history and geography of Baden, this town, and pastor of the church at Oeblingen, a small neighborhood town. So Wundt was connected with the Illuminati, his grandfather. Well, this is the background of Wilhelm Maximilian Wundt, who really trained the American educators in the behavioral psychology, stimulus response training type of Skinner, operant conditioning, bells, whistles, all that stuff, which does not teach, it trains for the workforce. Now, this was the order at Yale was directly connected with Wilhelm Wundt. They sent educators over there to study under Wundt. Stanley Hall was the first one to go. This is so important, this stuff here. The Hegelian influence on Hall. Between 1870 and 1882, a span of 12 months, Hall, the American, there's a lot of information on him here too, but I won't go into it. He was connected with Skull and Bones prior to going over. They probably sent him over. Spent 6 years in Germany. And he says, I do not know of any other, this is Hall talking, any other American student of these subjects, philosophy and psychology, who came into even the slight personal contact it was my fortune to enjoy with Hartmann and Fechner. They were psychologists over there as well. Nor of any psychologist who had the experience of attempting experimental work with Helmholtz. And I think I was the first American pupil of Wundt. Now, Wundt is the one we're dealing with, Wilhelm Wundt from Germany. He had the first laboratory, and people think that American psychology and all was the psychologist studied under Pavlov, that Pavlov was the first. No. Pavlov, interestingly enough, studied under Wilhelm Wundt in Leipzig. The 12 years included in this span as an American pupil of Wundt, more than any other equal period, marked and gave direction to modern psychology. Wilhelm Wundt, 1832 to 1920, professor of philosophy at University of Leipzig, was undoubtedly the major influence on G. Stanley Hall, who was subsequently, who trained, all the others, Thorndike, Dewey, and all of them, okay? And he was sent over. Hall, it appears that he had a lot of connections with the order at Yale, and that's why he ultimately ended up going to Leipzig. Modern education practice stems from Hegelian social theory combined with the experimental psychology of Wilhelm Wundt. The Hegelian theory, create the problem, people scream, impose a solution type of thing. And no right, no wrong, too. Whereas Karl Marx and von Bismarck applied Hegelian theory to the political field, it was Wilhelm Wundt, influenced by Johann Herbart, who applied Hegel, the Hegelian dialectic, to education, which in turn was picked up by Hall and John Dewey and modern educational theorists in the United States. That's to create the problem and people scream, impose a solution. That's the Hegel. Wundt is the animal training method that bypasses the brain. Wundt is important in the history of American education for the following reasons. He established in 1875 the world's first laboratory in experimental psychology to measure individual responses to stimuli. 2. Wundt believed that man is only the summation of his experience, the stimuli that bear upon him. It follows from this that for Wundt, man has no self-will, no self-determination. Man is in effect only the captive of his experiences, a pawn needing guidance. 3. Students from Europe and the United States came to Leipzig to learn from Wundt the new science of experimental psychology. These students returned to their homelands to found schools of education or departments of psychology and trained hundreds of PhDs in the new field of psychology. The core of our problem is that Wundt's work was based on Hegelian philosophical theory and reflected the Hegelian view of the individual as a valueless cog in the state, a view expanded by Wundt to include man as nothing more than an animal influenced solely by daily experiences. This Wundtian view of the world was brought back from Leipzig to the United States by G. Stanley Hall and other Americans and went through what is known among psychologists as the Americanization of Wundt. Although Hall was primarily a psychologist and teacher, his political views were partially Marxist, as Hall himself writes, quote, I had wrestled with Karl Marx and half accepted what I understood of him. Confessions, and don't forget Karl Marx used the Communist Manifesto was basically Weishaupt. It's important to remember that, huh? So this is really a very fine chapter out of Sutton's book, America's Secret Establishment. This is the chapter, How the Order Controls Education. And I want to point out that nobody but Sutton in the writings on the order has ever really dealt with education. Sutton saw the importance. I mean, he'd been doing all the work on our, aid to the Soviet Union on technology and all for the Hoover Institute. But he really, he's the only one who ever connected the order with education. Even this great book that Sutton Leipzig Connection, this great book, I don't believe that Paoli Leone understood the connection with the order either. He wrote about Wundt. It's a fantastic little book. You couldn't get it. The viewers can get this book. I think it's, there are a few very important books on education. I'd say that this is the #1 book on education that's ever been written. This little book. And I think Anthony Sutton agreed, because he got a lot of his work